So I tore off her clothes, and I had a pitcher of red fruit punch that was on a end table in the living room. And I threw the punch all over her, and I opened the door and tried to push her out into the front yard. And I remember her crying and screaming and begging not to do this. And, it was daytime, and the neighbors would be out there, and I was in such a rage that I really didn't care what they thought. We had a fight in the house, and this time we had a loaded shotgun. And here we are fighting between my wife and myself, and I've got a loaded shotgun. Anything could have happened. And I remember I finally, during the struggle, got the shotgun away from her and myself. I was holding it also, and the butt of it ended up hitting her in the face and bruising her face severely.
This is The Bottom Line. I'm Gary Thiemann in Los Angeles. Being an alcoholic addict, Jim will be the first to tell you it wasn't something he planned on. It was a process. Took some time, took some work. Fortunately, his story is about recovery. That too is a process. Jim explains.
My name's Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I don't remember the exact date I had my first drink, but I know that it was sometime around the holidays when I was young, 6 to 10 years old. I remember my grandparents and relatives, aunt and uncle, and my mom, and they would have drinks, eggnog and Tom and Jerry's. We would ask as kids to have one of these drinks, and they would say, no, you can't have one, you're too young. But inevitably, we figured a way how to get a hold of the liquor and pour some into the eggnog. And I remember enjoying the excitement of sneaking this drink that the adults were having so much fun with. And the warm glow, the peaceful feeling that would come inside after consuming the alcohol. My father was an alcoholic, abused prescription drugs. He had mental problems from the war. I remember things back when I was a child about the violence that would happen in the house. As I approached being a teenager, I swore to myself that I would never do those things and become like that. The next time I remember having alcohol, I was a teenager, just starting into junior high. And I remember asking a friend of mine if his older brother could buy us beer. And it was a procedure to try to get a hold of alcohol. It was not as easy as in the 60s when I was a teenager. Drugs became more prevalent and easier to get. My first experience with marijuana in junior high. And I remembered that I also enjoyed that feeling, that it gave me a chance to escape from the realities of the day and things I was going through. And it was accepted amongst my peers, the young teenagers of the 60s. So I proceeded to drink alcohol when I could get a hold of it and smoke marijuana, and proceeded to do this intermittently through my junior high years. It wasn't until I was in high school that I was introduced to stronger drugs. I remember in the 10th grade in high school being introduced to amphetamines. And at this time, when I tried the amphetamines, they made me feel alive, a lot of energy. I felt like I was on top of the world. And it didn't take long after using these for a period of months, on and off for a period of months, that along with the high going up, there was a big come down. I figured out that if I could drink some alcohol with the amphetamines, at the end of running out of the amphetamines, that the alcohol would lessen the down effect, would make coming off the drug a little bit easier. And I thought it was a great combination, being partly up and partly down from the alcohol, the effects. I remember high school being an exciting time. People, or the other children, young adults, were very liberal in their thinking. And it wasn't long before I, too, decided that I would try a hallucinogenic. So I tried LSD. I tried sedatives that were available. I believe they were called Yellow Jackets and Reds. I didn't like the effect of those to the point where I would pass out, and I would always feel dizzy and nauseous, probably from taking too much of the drug. But anyway, my alcohol and drug use had progressed through high school. I had a really bad experience on LSD. I think it was the third time I tried it, which was the last, and I'd had enough of that. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel I was in any control. It really messed with my head, as we said back in those days. In fact, it was so bad that there was a period of time that I didn't drink or use any drugs whatsoever. I had sworn off. I had met my current wife, and we started a family. And everything was good for a few years. No alcohol and no drug usage. I don't know exactly how it led up to it, but I ended up drinking again and getting heavier involved in amphetamine usage. I could see where my spiral down really accelerated. I became paranoid, thinking that my wife was doing things behind my back. I was missing time at work. I was staying away from the house, my home, for several days at a time. Things were getting bad. I would accuse my wife of all kinds of things. The arguments got more intense. I remember there was a time where I was so angry at my wife for something that I thought in my head she'd done, cheating on me, that I told her to leave our home and take our 2 boys with her, and that she would leave the home with what she came to me with, nothing. So I tore off her clothes, and I had a pitcher of red fruit punch that was on a end table in the living room. And I threw the punch all over her, and I opened the door and tried to push her out into the front yard. And I remember her crying and screaming and begging not to do this. And, it was daytime, and the neighbors would be out there, and I was in such a rage that I really didn't care what they thought. I finally agreed to let her put something on and to get out. So she throws some clothes on, grabs the 2 boys. I shut the door, and she left for the domestic violence center, understandably so. I remember another time being high on the drugs and drinking so much alcohol that I really didn't know what I was doing, but I recall we had a fight in the house, and this time I had a loaded shotgun. And here we are fighting between my wife and myself, and I've got a loaded shotgun. Anything could have happened. And I remember I finally, during the struggle, got the shotgun away from her and myself. I was holding it also, and the butt of it ended up hitting her in the face and bruising her face severely. And, I look back on these times, and I'm so embarrassed about what had happened, and I'm so sorry for it. During the same period of time, there were episodes where I'd want to stay up drinking and using these drugs. And my 2 boys, at a very young age, they were still, I think, 2 and 4 years old. I remember giving them a drug called Valium so that they would sleep through the night, so that I could carry on my antics all night long and have these parties at the house. I also feel so embarrassed about that. I feel terrible that I could have done these things. and it's been a real struggle to try to let go of some of these haunting memories of things that happened. I remember how bad it was, and that I'd promised my wife that if she would come back from the domestic violence center, I would quit drinking and using. And I meant it with all my heart. She did come back, and to my surprise, of course, the drinking and the drug use started up again. I believe it was something like 6 months later. And I'd called a helpline because I'd had enough. I had hit bottom. I felt that I couldn't go on living with the drugs and the alcohol, and I couldn't live without them. I couldn't stay off of it. I'd broken every promise I'd ever made to anybody. I felt I had to reach out. So I called this helpline, and the man on the other end of the phone, I remember saying to him, this is New Year's, I believe it was New Year's Day, and I said, do you think I have a problem? And the guy on the other end of the phone said, if you could step back for a moment and take a look at yourself. Here it is, New Year's Day, when most families are watching the ball games, the football games, and enjoying the food and the holiday. Here you are in a back bedroom, which I told him where I was, huddled in a corner, shaking, and asking this guy if he thought I had a problem with alcohol and drugs. And it set me back enough so that I could take a moment, and like clarity, it came to me that, yeah, I really do have a problem, and a normal person wouldn't be doing this on New Year's Day calling for help. So I agreed to go to some meetings and see what this was about.
There is a solution. It's a humbling journey, turning over all your power to a power greater than yourself. That one is God, as you understand Him. Many through Alcoholics Anonymous experience what they call a spiritual awakening, as best can be described by Jim's experience.
In the back of my head, I'd always thought that maybe I was just a drug addict and not an alcoholic. I mean, after all, I preferred the drugs, and in my head I'd convinced myself that I only used the alcohol to lessen the effects of the drugs. I think that was holding back in the program that I'm involved with, where I had a slight bit of doubt whether I was really an alcoholic. And inevitably what happened was that I started going to less meetings, and I stopped talking to my sponsor that I had, and I started drinking again. I was spiritually bankrupt again. I had no relationship with this God or higher power. Here I was, the same predicament after 6 years of sobriety. And boy, did I feel really bad. I don't think, unless you've experienced this, you can understand the incomprehensible demoralization that you feel when you hate yourself this much and let yourself down to that point. I continued to drink for about a year. Progressively got worse to the point where I was starting to black out. I began to get diarrhea all the time, eating less and less food, drinking more and more alcohol. I started to shake at night, like a jerking sensation in bed, and couldn't sleep, insomnia. I would go to bed drunk, passing out drunk, and wake up at 2, 3 in the morning craving another drink. I don't know how I didn't lose my job through this period of time, but I was able to manage to hold on to it and go through the shakes in the morning, by lunch, feeling a little bit better and looking forward to 3 o'clock when I would get off work and be able to consume again as much alcohol as I could get in me till I would pass out that evening and start the cycle over again. I had no idea that alcohol was going to stop working for me. It got to a point where it didn't matter how much I consumed, I couldn't stop my head from thinking thoughts of how miserable I was. I couldn't drink away how bad the feelings were inside me. I couldn't get that warm glow again. It seemed like everything stopped working. And then one night, I managed to consume enough alcohol to go into what the doctors told me after I went in to find out what was wrong, was an alcoholic seizure. And I remember passing out and then coming to and flopping around on the floor in my bedroom, and my body jerking uncontrollably in these seizures. And I remember going in and out of consciousness, praying to a God that I don't know, saying, please don't let me die like this. I remember gradually coming out of it, the seizures subsiding after hours. I remember making a commitment to myself that I was not going to continue my life like this. I was either going to take my own life or find a way of recovery, of living that would allow me to continue life. I couldn't go on the way it was. The serenity and the peace I receive when I do let go is fantastic. It's what makes it all worthwhile to going to the meetings and to trying to live this new way of life. I don't have to use alcohol and drugs to feel good about myself during the day. When I start to doubt and to have worries, if I stop and be quiet for a moment and try to turn it over that I don't own the job, that it's a gift and it could be taken away, that I don't own the house, it could be taken away. My boys and my wife, they're gifts of the sobriety. They're still there after all that's happened. That could be taken away too. For me, the bottom line is that I have sobriety, and at times I have peace of mind in the program, and I'm willing to do what it takes in the program to try to maintain this type of a relationship with God that I don't understand. But I'm willing at this point to be open and to allow Him to work in my life.
I waited in the quiet place, away from cares and company. My soul's desire to see your face, to calm the storm and rage in me. Then in that silent hour you came. deepest heart you dwell, and speak the words which in me burn. Love creates love, and so well that love calls for love in return, in return.
You've been listening to The Bottom Line, featuring Jim Story, a successful comeback into the throes of reality, sobriety. Thank you, Jim, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope so that others might have a chance at recovery. This show is produced for Armed Forces Radio, heard coast to coast and around the world. I'm Gary Thiemann. Until next time, God bless you, and share the message, won't you? This has been a GRT production.
Thank